ఒక్కటే, దేశాలు వేరైన రేడియో ఒక్కటే. మీరు వింటున్నారు తెలుగు NRI రేడియో. ఇది ప్రవాసాంధ్రుల గుండె చప్పుడు.
Hey, hi, hello. Hey, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Welcome to Telugu NRI Radio. This is Venkat from Radio Venkat from Houston. So it's been a long time to have a radio show, and I started again. So I will come up the more details. Mostly I will do on U.S. immigrations. I will come up the more details in near future. Before going to the show, everyone know it means we are getting the new administration in 2025, and everyone eagerly looking the more information in immigration to what are the changes and how Trump administration is going to take action. So even Trump is campaigning on immigration on illegal and process-wise and everything. We have a guest in my show. We will ask the more question and get the more information and very detailed to understanding how we take the precautions and take care to not impact our immigration status who are in USA. And also we are ready to help to anyone. If anyone have any question on immigration, please reach out to us. We will happy to help to everyone. Yeah. Now welcoming to attorney. So today we have a Lucas-Garritson. He's from Burgos&Garritson law firm. I worked with Garritson Lucas the past couple of years ago, and we had a series of interviews and bringing the immigration changes, news, updates every week. So again, we planned and together and come up with more details next the following years and following shows. So welcome, Lucas, in my show.
Thank you, Venkat. Thank you for having me. Thank you for organizing this. And namaste to all the listeners. And hopefully we can have some good information this afternoon and certainly address a lot of questions that everyone has.
Yeah, last 4 years, it means everyone is comfortable in the zone in Biden administration, but it means that Trump is taking the new oath into 2025 January 20, and everyone eagerly waiting what are the changes, what is the changes in new immigration system. So can you give a little information about the current Biden administration and what Trump is going, the new changes in new coming year?
Sure. So I think everyone's fully aware, over the past year, this administration has proposed rules that impact many facets of H-1B visas, F-1 students, H-1B registration, multiple registration rules, things like this. Part of those rules were published and finalized earlier this year. And prior to the end of this administration, the remaining rules were finalized or will be finalized prior to Trump becoming the next president on the 20th of January. In these rules, they might not seem like they're going to be a huge impact, or there's not that many changes, but if you look at everything in the context of what could happen, these are very serious changes. These are very large changes in the sense of how things have operated for the past 5 years and how not only the current administration might use it to regulate H-1Bs, but then also how Trump might use this in his administration to also bring in their policies in regulating foreign workers here in the United States.
Yeah. I think we already seen it in the last couple of days. US has released the new changes. What is they are going to implement after January 17th or 20, and also just I want to stress one point. I think I observed major universities and companies sending an email to everyone, to the students and their employees who are non-citizens. Hey, please come back in before January 20th. So what is this? Why they are sending this email to their students and employees? So will we expecting any major changes?
I think what we can expect is to expect the unknown. If anyone could predict what Trump might do, obviously we would be able to also pick a lot of other things, for in the future, maybe even win the lottery. So what we can anticipate, we don't know. And the safest thing to do would be to come back to the United States prior to the 20th. That way that there's not any issues with entry or re-entry following a brief travel. Obviously, stamping, we all know the headaches that have been over the past 4 years with 221Gs, administrative processing, and things like this. So, yes, we do want to encourage everyone to come and be back inside the United States prior to the 20th, just so there's no issues of a visa being canceled or rejected, which is always a possibility if you're questioned at when you arrive at the airport and go through immigration. If an officer goes through your phone or they don't like an answer that's received, they might cancel or reject your visa. And we all know that Trump has put bans in place in the past, also like with Muslim bans and other things like this, that even if it's not lawful and maybe even if it's not held up long term, in that moment, it is a huge headache and it's a lot of stress, especially if you've traveled over 20 hours, by airplane to finally arrive in the States only to be sent back on a plane for another 20 hours. So we want to avoid that if at all possible.
Yeah, that's true. So listeners, now we are in holiday season and everyone was planned for vacations and meet family members in India or any other countries. Maybe please watch out the immigration news and plan accordingly and get back before January 20th to be safe in the immigration status. So, and one point you mentioned, I think last term, the Trump 2016 to 20 is imposed the ban for countries, right? So are we expecting any kind of travel?
As far as a travel ban, I mean, obviously that might be something that they want to work on. I think what everyone needs to understand is whatever Trump did in his first term was usually a little messy because he did not have any experience or knowledge as to how our legal system works and what he could do legally and what he could do long-term or short-term, or what actions had repercussions or did not have repercussions. And I think, he's had, with a lot of his current cabinet choices, they've had 4 years to really polish their tools and understand what they want to do starting on day one. So whatever they do, they'll probably do with more, organized effort this time than probably what happened in 2017. Now, having said that, if you don't mind, I'd like to just address a few things. I know I've heard yesterday, there's been, impacting our students. There's been a few students that were raided in Georgia, working at restaurants, and that was by the state of Georgia trying to enforce an immigration, principle of working with certain employment authorization or not. We're going to probably see more things like that typically we haven't seen in the past, where a state's trying to enforce certain policies or regulations. Texas is probably another good candidate where you might see that. So when they say they're going to go after, we don't like to use this word, for illegal immigrants or undocumented people from day one, there's a large swath of our country that might overlap into maybe, right now the market's slow and maybe a student has to work without permission, in a restaurant or a gas station, and, maybe the government will come and raid them. And, that's obviously not a good situation to be in. And what we want to remember is everyone, no matter what status they're in, if they have a status or no status, if they're a citizen or not, is everyone has civil rights. Everyone has the right, that if someone wants to come into your place from the government, that they need to have a warrant or some other authorization to allow them to take action there. And we don't want to be victimized when it comes to this type of action or policy, right?
Yeah. Yes, that is a valid point. So I think, Trump also mentioned in the campaign when he take the oath after he would focus the illegal, undocumented immigrants. So it's really going to take serious action once he take oath, or is there any, what is the approach and what is the strategy for illegal immigrants?
It's not so much, we don't like to use the word illegal immigrants, it's just undocumented.
And
correct. And what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of local police, probably in the state, and the local police will take some sort of action to try and enforce on a broader scale. The federal government doesn't have funding. And that's another thing, that today the budget's going to expire, and there's, they might shut down the government this afternoon if a new funding bill is not in place. But having said that, Congress hasn't authorized Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, to have an unlimited budget. So when Trump says he wants to do all these actions cost money. And what they're betting on is that states are going to help pick up the tab and handle most of the heavy lifting on behalf of the federal government. So we're not going to see so much of maybe ICE raids or anything like this. It might look like what's just happened in Georgia. It might be some local authority, even local police, showing up at a restaurant and demanding all the employees in there show that they have proof of work. And when you take that concept and that idea, it's not so much if what we think of as undocumented people being from a certain country or where they are. If it's, like I said, once some of our students that are working in a restaurant, they would be caught up and viewed in the same sense as someone that might be undocumented in the eyes of whoever's doing the enforcement. So we want to be careful with that. And I know there's a lot of students that are on the bench that maybe are having a hard time finding a project or a job, and that's something everyone needs to really consider and focus on in the short term. How are they going to plan, and if they are approached by law enforcement, how do you respond? What are your rights? Do you have to show someone who comes into a place without a warrant, do you have to show them or comply with what they're asking for? These are all conversations everyone should have and be prepared for to help mitigate any type of issue that might arise from that.
Okay. So, Lucas, one question. Let's say if any officer come and ask, hey, show me my mobile, or maybe if they want to search, is the officer right to search, or the officer should come with the warrant, a search warrant, and do the search? How maybe just we would like to understand how U.S. law enforcement will work here.
So everyone needs to have some type of warrant, or with the federal government, they could ask for a subpoena, but it needs to have some authorized search for that person. There's no agreement you have to be here as a student or H-1B or any other visa category to where you have to show someone randomly on the street your phone. Obviously, when you enter the United States, that's a different circumstance. But when you're here, we want to make sure that your rights are protected, and everyone, regardless if you're a citizen or if you're an immigrant or not an undocumented immigrant, everyone has the same rights, the same civil rights, where the police have to have, a warrant or some due process to follow to make sure that whatever they're asking for is legitimate. And if you have doubts, it's always fair to say, sir, can I see a warrant, or let me contact my attorney, and you don't have to answer any questions, and you can, have your attorney or call your attorney or speak to whomever you need and make sure that they have a warrant and the permission from a court or from the proper authorities to have an examination on your phone or anything else.
Yeah. I think this is the good information to understanding how the law enforcement work in the United States. So we are discussing on the students and how it was just we discussed. We do have a lot of it was more affecting is the students because they do have one STEM extension, right? So it means earlier every student submitted any document or something for the extension. They are getting very, very easily for extension for 2 years. Nowadays hearing so it gets complicated to extend the STEM OPT.
Oh, what we've been seeing, I've seen, already this year probably 200 or 300 STEM RFEs for STEM OPT extensions, and what they're focusing on, the government, is to make sure that each student maintains status where they were employed. Now, for post-completion OPT, most students, you can take an unpaid internship, you can do that type of employment, but you do have to have consistency with being employed. So they're looking for gaps in employment, and they're also looking to see if someone's using their employment authorization unlawfully. So we see a lot of requests for bank statements and payroll documents. And what they're trying to find is to see if I have my employment authorization and I have a background in computer science, did I go and get a job at a restaurant and I'm getting paid using my employment authorization from the restaurant in direct deposit into my bank. That's one of the processes being, issued right now. But more often than not, it's hard to track how someone's earning money or not, especially if they're being paid in cash or something like that. So you could see more of a site visit or more follow-ups in that regard for students. And so we need to be aware and make sure we understand what the requirements are for students and to maintain their status, and what they need to do to make sure they don't foresee any issues, if they do happen to have some type of situation with the site visit.
Yeah. So let's say if STEM OPT get denied, is there any way to reopen the case or something? But how?
Yeah, there's multiple ways to do this. Usually, if your STEM OPT extension is denied, your CVIS will also be terminated. There is a way, and also I've dealt with about 6 or 7 students this year where that's happened, and the school, they'll try and transfer to another school, and the new school will say, okay, you need to go to Mexico and then come back in the country. And when they're doing that, some of these students are being detained and removed from the United States. What I typically recommend is we, file a reinstatement with USCIS to reinstate the F1 status if something like that happens. And then, of course, obviously the STEM OPT would no longer be an option, but you could obviously go to a new university, maybe day one CPT or something like that. But a lot of these changes that have been coming up are very alarming, and I know it's been a few years, but we've had the discussion before, and I've helped students that were tied up with the Farmington University issue, with the fake university. So if the government can go to the expense and trouble to make a fake university to try and, I guess, capture the boogeyman and all these people that are breaking the law and it impacts students, I would imagine that they might try something similar again this next time around.
Yeah, we see in the Farmington, Michigan, Detroit, right? Detroit University. Yeah, for who are seeking the day one CPT, please recheck about the university and choose the best university for pursue. Or else maybe you can take help from any attorneys or maybe legal advice. Yeah. So, Lucas, I think we in the starting program we discussing about the new administration is changing on the H-1B. So now we can discuss a little more deeper. What are the changes is happening in respect to H-1 programming?
So that's a very good point. I'm glad we're able to pivot over to this. The Biden administration just on Tuesday has this rule set to be published, and that'll be prior to when Trump is sworn in. So it'll be enacted as a final rule. I know a lot of people might have heard how these things can come and go or be changed. Once a rule becomes a final rule under the Administrative Procedures Act, it does become difficult to undo that rule. Typically, there's two ways: either Congress and the president can review to see if it's in scope with what the agency should be doing, or they'll just make a new rule to make the changes. So both of these take time, and both of these are usually unlikely because it takes more effort and more work to get this done. So with this, having said that, these new changes are very important to review. Number one, for H-1s, the primary key provision now is they're looking at specialty occupation and trying to redefine that to where if you have a job and the job duties align with a computer programmer or software developer, typically if you look at all published data within the government, which is what USCIS will do, they'll say, what is a typical, out of all the data we collect and all the surveys, what's the typical degree that relates to this position? And it could be anything from they might say, well, you need to have a computer science degree or something like this. And you want to make sure that, that aligns with it. Now, in the past, you could have, a degree, like an employer could say, oh, I want someone with a business analyst background to do computer science or computer programming or something like this. And that's typically been allowed. And what they're trying to do now is they're trying to focus this new role to qualifying specific occupations to make sure they meet that specialty occupation. At the end of the day, it's a very detailed analysis, but it comes down to your job duties and what those job duties relate to in the sense of what the government defines as that occupation or the SOC code, and what the education background, all degrees are different from all universities, and part of some schools they might have some I guess certain MBAs might have a focus in CIS or other things like that, computer information systems, and that might relate more into it all, to kind of bridge that gap. But then some MBAs might be just more of a pure finance. Some people I know that do validation work for pharmacies have a pharma background, so validation engineer, analyzing data, stuff like this. We want to make sure that we use the right SOC code and have the right job duties that correspond to it. Now, on the surface, that doesn't seem like it would be a large change, but where we're going to see a lot of challenges is going to come up with the next part, and that's kind of going back to this FDNS, which is a Fraud Detection and National Security Office within USCIS, doing site visits. And in the past, these site visits have been voluntary, and we could participate or not participate and not impact our case. Well, this new rule has updated that to where every single site visit is mandatory. And if you do not participate, it could lead to the denial of your H-1B case or revoking of your H-1 if it's already been approved. And what these officers are doing is they're going to contact your employer and your end client, and they're going to say, and then also the worker, and they're going to say, tell me your job duties. And maybe the job duties might be a little different from person A to person B to person C. And then now USCIS might re-examine those job duties from what they are told in the site visit and say that, well, you chose the wrong SOC code, or you have the wrong job description here, and it should really be job B, and you chose job A. And based upon these facts, this isn't going to work, and we're going to revoke your visa. So there's a lot of provisions like this that are going to challenge everyone's status, but not in the sense of the initial filing. It'll be how these site visits are used. And, we have no ability to review what's written in a site visit. We have no ability to get that information or know what the officer says. And it's very much scary when you think about it. You have a lot of your career, your status, everything's in the hands of some unknown person, and it's writing a report that's completely unknown to both you and your attorney and your employer. And so that's what I think we're going to be seeing a lot of. And what we want everyone to do is just to make sure that everything we do should have a purpose. Everything that we participate with should be coordinated and planned prior to that date coming up. So what can you do to help avoid any issues? All employers should be able to coordinate with all employees, make sure we have a plan of action if we are approached with a site visit. These are the job duties we have that were filed for your case. Contact your end client and let them know these are, if you have a client letter, obviously that your job duties would be in a client letter. These are all things that would be something that you would want to make sure is directly addressed before some emergency comes up. And, we're giving different answers that could impact your status, right?
Yeah. I think it look like it's a little, it's tightening the H1 process. So before we did not see this kind of the rules. Maybe if site visit mandatory, I do have a couple of questions, because let's say when they visit the site visit, they will contact to a job applicant or a manager, how they approach, they're going to be approached to get site visit.
Typically, they'll approach to all three. They'll approach the employer who filed the H-1B. They'll also, speak to the employee. Sometimes they'll, and a lot of people work remotely. Sometimes they'll show up at your house and they'll want this information. And then obviously sometimes if they have the contact at the end client, they'll want to contact them as well. So, there is a lot of minor changes here, but it's a major impact. Something else, coming up with this is we want to make sure that, this market's been tough right now. There's a lot of people that have been on bench or in between projects, and maybe these officers will also want to see payroll to make sure you're maintaining your status. Maybe they want to see your bank records to make sure that you're being paid. These are all changes that, on their own don't seem like they add up to a lot. But if you put it all together and then you employ more officers to do more of these site visits, and then you have a Trump president who wants to do more regulation about these, it's almost like weaponizing or, creating a Gestapo to come after these employees just based upon their H-1B status. And obviously, we don't know exactly how it's going to be used, but there's a lot of tools here that they can start revoking a lot of visas. And we don't want that to happen. People have lives here and families and houses, and we don't want, to go back to 2017 where people were panicked and, something happened, or they only got an approval for 3 months, and then now they're selling their car and taking care of their house, moving back to India. That's very traumatic and hard to go through.
Yeah, that's true. So when this rules going to be implemented? Maybe after January 17th or something, or is immediate?
It should be published by the 17th. Now,
Okay.
that's a very good question. What does that mean today? What if I get contacted to participate in a site visit? Do I have to? Technically, as of today, you can still voluntarily choose to participate or not. But it would probably be beneficial to go ahead and participate and provide the information requested because, in a few weeks, that's going to be something they're going to rely on. So you might get some punishment in the future for not participating, possibly. So it is something that, even though, yes, technically it's not a rule that's relied upon, it's not codified at the moment, it could have impacts, not participating with the site visit now after this is codified.
Yeah. I think most of H-1B holders have a question. Hey, agents who are extending their H-1B extension application. So let's say they applied 5 months ago in the normal process, still in progress. So currently we are seeing the new rules are coming up. So are they will implement the previous application too, or these new rules will apply only going forward from the January 17th after published the date?
Well, certain parts of the rule obviously be after the date, like what we just talked about. Maybe they could say you didn't participate in the site visit, or there's negative information in this report that's here that they could use in the future, right? But another thing you mentioned about extensions, one positive thing for the new rule is that there is, when Trump, I think in 2017, was getting into all this H-1 stuff, they changed some of the policies to say that, USCIS doesn't have any deference to previous decisions. So that means if your H-1 cap case was approved, now you're getting an extension and then you file an amendment. In the past, they would say, well, the other cases were approved, and based upon this, the education was valid, everything else, we don't need to revisit that because we know that they have a bachelor's degree or higher because they've had an approval in the past. Well, Trump changed that, and now with this new rule, it's going to be codified where the USCIS, the officers can defer to previous decisions. So that is a positive. But like I said, the most important thing about this is going to be this FDNS, fraud detection, national security inspections. And that's going to focus, where do you live? What is your pay rate? Where do you, maybe some people also move, right? Maybe an amendment wasn't filed when it was supposed to be. Maybe there's other things that they're going to try and find and weaponize to cancel and revoke H-1s. And, I think we're going to see a lot of that. And before we go on to the next subject, I do want to say what you can do is if these things happen and you get a notice of intent to revoke and your case is revoked, there's still options available. One option is you're always able to, or your employer would always be able to file a lawsuit to challenge the erroneous decision that USCIS made. Okay, that's one option. Another option might be to change status, right? Maybe going from H-1B, if your spouse is also on H-1, you could change to H-4. And then another option would be maybe you have the flexibility to work remotely, or if it's not offshore, maybe you could work near shore. Maybe you could go to Canada or Mexico, and that would be an option temporarily while this is fixed. So what we want to do is make sure we're making plans for worst case scenarios that hopefully never happen. But if they do, you have a good idea of what you need to do moving forward and have, a plan in place.
Yeah. So if you if you remember last Trump tenure, I think so. When we apply the H1 extension, we will send one package with H1, H4, and H4 EAD, maybe in premium process. So, is any anticipation to impose the same rules what he last term? I mean, just adding the one step to get the fingerprints for the H4 EAD. Will
things like
come again?
I mean, there's a possibility they could try and do something similar. I think there's been some lawsuits on this, and there's been some other issues addressing different parts of what you're describing. Things always change, and I would never think that something is going to just repeat itself because it happened in the past. There's going to be different challenges. Just like right now, one of the challenges is it's more of an inconvenience. We can file electronically. We can file an extension for an H1, but we have to mail in any request for extension for H4 or H4 EAD. So the option's still there to mail in the whole packet together. But, hopefully some of these changes will go away as technology kind of also is incorporated more into how we process these cases.
Okay. So yeah, we are discussing a lot of the new rules about non-documented students and H1. How about the GC? So Trump said that maybe one of the meetings, hey, whoever completed the master, they will get the GC or something. Is really going to be implemented that too? Or?
Well, I mean, like I said before, I think anything's possible. And typically, so the way our country is established is we want Congress to make a law and pass the law, and then the president will sign it into law, and then the president will execute what that law should be, And over the past few years, we've kind of really gone down this path of where the executive branch has more and more power to adjust on the fly, like these rules, without Congress actually, voting on this and passing it into law. So that's something that's not a positive. But if Trump really wants to do what he says with these quote unquote mass deportations, he would have to have some congressional backing to have the ability to finance everything, to hire enough people because you'd have to have more immigration judges, you'd have to have more agents, you'd have to have more funding for jails, I guess, private jails and all this to house the people. So, he would have to have Congress. So one way to pitch this might be to say, if we do this and we do border security and this and that, a trade-off would be we could increase the visas allotted for, category A or B or whatever it might be. And maybe that would include, people with a master's degree or higher, or have certain, work qualifications, maybe if it's related to AI or something else. So, I mean, anything could be on the table at that point. And if Congress goes along with that and as part of negotiations, they pass something like that, it is possible that there could be a watershed moment here for people that with pending GCs. Maybe that it would be a benefit, a plus.
Okay. So is there any anticipation of employee-based green card faster? Is there any?
I think so. I think if you look at, so every year there's only a certain amount of visas that are available to be issued, meaning GCs, and it's all allocated based upon certain categories, based upon certain countries. We all know, I think anyone listening would understand and are as much of an expert as any attorney because of how long and they've had to wait and understanding those processes and how frustrating it is. But like I said, I think if Trump wants to do something that would require Congress to support him, there would have to be a give and take. And so one of the trade-offs might be saying, look, if I do all this and have funding to take care of what we think of as undocumented people or these other issues we want to address with border security. Well, we also want to help out our part of our population that's, a backbone of our tech industry. Maybe that's a trade-off, or that they say we want to help address these backlogs. So yeah, it's a very real possibility. It's something that could happen, but like I said, if I knew exactly what was going to happen, I would, play the lottery or do other things and get a lot of money. So we don't know, and everything's in play. And I think it is an option, and it's probably the most positive news, I think, on this for this backlog since 2020. Whenever so many people were able to downgrade and file for GC.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll hope you get done more and more news on the GC and get faster, get the proper status. So just one topic I want to discuss about the visa stamping. Maybe we've seen before some consulates are not allowing to get the appointment other than their country. So let's say I'm from India. If I want to go to the Canada and Mexico, maybe they are not allowing to schedule. Maybe I want to go back to the India and get stamped. So do you have any information on the visa stamping and consulate, how they are going to be taking action in New Year?
So that's always kind of been the situation. I mean, sometimes you can go and get a stamp. They even tried to do a pilot program here in the United States that we're still waiting to see if they're going to try and, restart again, where you can get stamped here within the United States. But I think the main idea is when you're planning for stamping or when you're planning for anything, I always tell people immigration is much like your retirement plan, right? You don't just wake up one day and say, I want $1 million tomorrow for my retirement. It takes a lot of time, planning, preparation to get to that point. And this is no different than if you're setting up your 401k or your own stocks. What you want to do is to make sure that if something happens, let's say your case is revoked here in the United States, but you're still working and your end client is able to let you work maybe here near shore in Canada or Mexico, while the immigration part's taken care of, you can still work. And, there's options. We can help people go to either country. And once you're in Canada or Mexico for a period of time and you're working from there, there's no issue with getting a stamp in Mexico. The main issue would be just going to Mexico to get your stamp instead of your country of origin. So, there's always options there. We don't want people to lose their job or to have such drastic changes, but there's a lot of options that are there to address these issues that come up. And hopefully we can continue this program for the next few months at least to, help provide information for these current events that do arise.
Yeah. So just I want to discuss. So within the US, the stamping, the pilot program, it accommodated 20,000 applications, right? Did all 20,000 get approved, or do you have any data on that one?
I don't have the exact data in front of me, but from what I understand, the majority of these stamps were issued. I do want to give a little bit of clarity too. So, as we're all familiar, in 2020, there was an important case that was filed from IT Serve Alliance against USCIS, and it was a huge victory. This stopped the client letters, the MSAPO requirement. It stopped the itinerary. It stopped a lot of things that USCIS was relying on to verify that you had an actual, quote unquote, a bona fide job. When the government can't when USCIS cannot ask for these documents, what ended up happening is the State Department, which is a completely different branch of the government, different agency altogether, they're in charge of the stamping part of this. So what they would do is they would start verifying certain details. That's why we saw so many 221Gs in admin processing. So in a positive sense, I guess if these site visits are mandatory now and USCIS is going to have all this information to validate and verify, I would think that there's not going to be as much of a logjam in the sense of waiting to get the stamp with admin processing. So if USCIS is already going to gather that information, it should help alleviate that issue where people have been stuck or, for months and months on end outside the United States.
Yeah, got it. So, Lucas, I think I have a one question scenario. One of my friend is asking. So, I think they applied H1 extension with premium process. Premium process are normal is along with H4 and H4 EAD. H1B got approved, and still H4 and H4 EAD is still progress. Let's say if they want to travel outside of USA. So here I have a couple of questions. So let's say they get the stamp and get back. Technically, if any application process, if you go outside of the United States, the application might be denied, rejected, right? So in this case, let's say, Lucas,
any H4. So if you're extending your I-94, right? So for H4 is whenever you leave the United States, or an H1B status too, your I-94 will
expired,
be non-effective. It's over. And so when you come back in the United States, you have a new I-94, right?
Yeah.
So if it's something that's going to be not used anymore, you can no longer extend it. So for H4, if you leave while it's being processed, case will be canceled as abandoned. Okay. So now the EAD part.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. Yeah. What about the EAD, H4 EAD? Will you get approved?
So sometimes they'll get an RFE. The USCIS will issue an RFE that will say, I see that they've departed the United States. We need an updated I-94. So when they come back in, we'll have the I-94 and we can respond to that RFE. Sometimes they'll also, deny the case as being abandoned since they left the United States. So I've seen it multiple ways. The best thing, though, under your example, is for premium processing, everything was filed together. If the H4 and H4 EAD are not approved, the attorney can probably go ahead and email the premium processing team and have that resolved. There is a lawsuit settlement where all of these H4 EADs that are filed in premium along with the H1, they're required to process them all at the same time. And typically, for me, anytime I've ever had that issue, we just do one simple email and the other cases are approved, relatively in a short period of time.
Okay. Yeah, that is a good information. Yeah. So, yes, Lucas, and today we discussed a lot of immigration updates and about the new changes, what Trump is going to be imposed. So I think we can stop the interview today till now. So is there anything apart from what we discussed to suggest, or maybe main if any students or H1 they want to focus or take care something from their side?
I do want to thank you and thank our listeners for allowing us to have this discussion. I think it's great if we share information and provide information to the community, and that way everyone's informed. There are other provisions in this new rule we did not discuss. And to really go through everything with a fine-tooth comb, it might take 2 or 3 more hours for us to go through everything in full detail. But I do want everyone to know and take away today that everything you should have a plan of action for everything. So if a site visit happens, if you're working somewhere, even if it's unauthorized employment and the government shows up, what are your rights? What is your responsibilities? What are you supposed to do or not supposed to do? I want you to have a plan for that. I want everyone to know that if that happens, is there a warrant? Is there some sort of subpoena or anything else that's going to require you to act? And going back to site visits, if you work remotely and your home address is on your LCA, and an officer shows up at your house, you have the right to not allow someone in your house. You can still talk to them and provide them the information, but that's your decision whether or not if you feel comfortable enough to let them in your house. And in that regards, I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday. Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, and hopefully, like I said, we can do this more frequently and help anyone in the community that might have any doubts or questions.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Lucas. We've been working since 2017, maybe with respect to the issues. Thank you for being with Telugu NRI Radio, and I hope we will continue the same session going forward to bring the new updates, any changes to awareness to the community and help to them to avoid such a situation to legal status. So thank for being with me, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Venkat.
Yeah, just let me introduce. The Lucas is from. It is an attorney from Burgos&Garritson from Dallas. So he's supporting the community servicing almost. I know from 2017, but I hope you are doing before. But we are happy. We are very happy working with you, and we resolve lot of issues and helping to the community and students and mainly Farmington. I think we help a lot. So listeners, if you have any kind of issues, any immigration issues, reach out to Telugu NRI Radio or Lucas. Maybe you can search bgimmlaw.com and get more details about Lucas Garrison, or you can call to 214-774-4713 for if you have any question or suggestion, any consultation on your cases. Yeah, feel free to reach out to Lucas, and definitely we will help to your case. Thank you very much, Lucas, being with me today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. This Venkat from Venkat Amjad from Houston. Please stay tuned for more immigration news and updates. In future, we will come up with more shows and more updates. Keep tuned. Thank you.